clearly this was the era of, if the reports are correct, of cultura collectiva, not of Facebook specifically. But do you think this is fairly common out there, where users of Facebook data have left it out there in a place that perhaps they shouldn't have done?
Yeah, I think one of the amazing things about the internet and the cloud is that we see so much innovation from so many applications, and we're able to use our data in amazing ways. And the downside to that, though, is that we have data that is fragmented around the internet, stored in lots of places that we as users don't even realize. And so every application that we install, every application that we use on Facebook, every application that we use anywhere is taking that information and storing it somewhere. And so if you have a misconfigured Amazon Web Services environment, that could leave data, unfortunately, vulnerable for researchers or attackers that might be discovering that information. So this is a real challenge. It means that all developers building applications need a high degree of security hygiene in how they build their applications, as we as users need to make sure that we're limiting the amount of systems and tools that we're using to manage our information.
Yeah,
which is
with that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, Aaron, is this the kind of thing that regulation can fix?
Well, I think it's a really good question. I do think at some point we need to be pretty thoughtful about oversight around our data privacy, where our information is going, the kinds of developers that are building these applications. There probably needs to be a higher bar for what types of apps can be installed and used within these types of environments, and some degree of maybe government oversight on the policies and the procedures that Facebook or any other development platform uses to let those types of applications go live where consumers might unknowingly be adding their data to those applications.
On that note, Mark Zuckerberg came out with an op-ed inviting regulation recently. What did you make of that? The timing of it, the fact he was doing it at all?
I think, at this stage in the market, it could be easy to be cynical about, why he's having to put that message out there. Obviously, there's a lot of scrutiny around the organization. It's certainly a situation where if he doesn't start to propose, or if Facebook doesn't start to propose regulation, it's going to happen to them one way or another, and they might not be in control or in the driver's seat of where we're actually going from a regulatory standpoint. However, at the same time, I do think that the points that he laid out, the 4 major areas of regulation, are going to be incredibly important. I think we need some degree of government oversight around how our data privacy works in the internet for these major platforms. We need to be able to have control of our information as consumers and users of these platforms. And there probably needs to be some shared understanding of what we do think of hate speech online, what we do think of what kind of information can be shared in these types of platforms. And it shouldn't be individual private corporations that are making those decisions. It probably needs to be something where it's more of a democratic process that which the government can help drive.
Well, you actually, when you acquire clients like the one you're doing today, which we'll talk about, help these companies and advise them on issues like GDPR, which is Europe's version of all of this. Is that sort of what you have in mind? Would that work here?
Yeah, I think what GDPR did, I think, really well in terms of outlining is the sort of philosophy of every user should be able to have control of their information and their personal information in these types of platforms, and we should be able to revoke access to that data if we so choose, and we should know what's sort of floating out there on the internet. Now, of course, that only works for EU citizens, and it's a very EU-specific set of privacy laws that we need, frankly, on a global scale. And so I think what Zuckerberg was calling out is, how do we have a U.S. version of this, but more importantly, how do we turn this into a global conversation? So on a per state or per region basis, we don't end up having different or conflicting laws from a data privacy standpoint. So I think it's actually really important. I think this is a time where we need to actually bring more regulation and oversight to tech, while at the same time balancing the sort of speed and agility and ability to innovate in these industries as well.
Aaron, as Sarah mentioned, a new partnership today with World Fuel Services for you guys. Why is that news? It's a new client, but why is that newsy and something you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think anytime that we bring on a new Fortune 500 company that's using us, especially in a regulated industry, especially any organization in an industrial space, World Fuel Services in the energy space and energy transportation market, critical customer that's going on live and moving to the cloud.
Because industrials haven't done that in the past?
I think we're seeing, there's always this sort of technology adoption life cycle where, technology companies adopt first, and then smaller startups start to adopt these cloud technologies. But now we're seeing large banks, pharmaceutical companies, energy organizations, government agencies begin to move to the cloud, start to modernize the way that they operate, the way they work. So we're happy to partner with WFS, as well as many other large industrial organizations as well.
Sort of gets us to the last earnings report that you put out at the end of February, which really hit with a thud on Wall Street. I mean, there were expectations of higher billings and higher customer acquisitions.
We would have chosen a different sound effect if we could have, but we were happy overall. Last year we did 20% growth in Q4 year over year. We put up some I think very solid metrics in terms of our large deals, $100,000 segment, $500,000 customers. Where we didn't perform as well as in that $1 million segment, and we saw that a few of our deals pushed out into FY20, which is the year we're in right now. And in particular, in very complex organizations, often very regulated institutions, banks, life sciences organizations, where these deals are more complex in nature. Some of that pushed into this year, which caused us to have to lower our guidance this year, which we were not satisfied with. This wasn't something that we were happy about. However, coming into this year, we're very confident in our growth targets and our ability to ensure that more and more of our customers can use more of our add-on products and more of the sort of full breadth of our platform, which drives these much larger deals and larger transaction sizes.
I wanted to ask if you had any views on the Lyft IPO. You went public 4 years ago and are trading above your IPO price at the moment. It's been a bumpy ride, of course. Do you think tech companies are going... What do you say to people when they say these tech companies are going public too late, not leaving enough on the table for retail investors?
I think that it's interesting because if we went back 10 years, we would probably say companies were going public too early, and there was way too much risk in the market with the stage at which startups were going public. So, I think that by the time you go public, especially when you're going to bring in retail investors into your stock, I think it's an important time where you want to make sure you have enough durability as a business. You have a future runway of growth, so there's more upside for investors. But from an operations standpoint, from a financial standpoint, from a strategy standpoint, you're able to actually go and continue to scale in the public market. So personally, I don't think companies are going too late on the whole. I think on a per company basis that might be the case, but in general, I think we want to remove the risk from a lot of these companies by the time they come into the public markets, while still leaving a high degree of upside. And I think we've seen that in the case of Facebook, Google, many other companies that went late in the journey on a historical basis, but still created tremendous upside for early investors as a public company.
I just want one final question, we're running out of time, but about regulation in your broader space.
Yep.
There's been lots of calls from it, Elizabeth Warren and co saying that the individual companies have too much power. Where you operate in, there are some Goliaths like AWS, Google and Microsoft, but yourselves, Dropbox, are operating in that space. Would you like to see those big three
broken up?
Or do you think the structure at the moment is kind of fair?
Occasionally I wouldn't mind it in the heat of competition, but no, I think that, listen, what's amazing about the technology industry is that it moves so quickly and it changes so quickly, and that any incumbent one day could be disrupted by a new insurgent. I think that the health of that it continues to this day. So I would rather let the markets overall drive competition. However, I do think there needs to be some form of regulation, in particular around data ownership, data privacy, the ability to control our information in these platforms. And then in general, it would be good to let the market actually choose what types of technologies they want to see play out in the market. But I do think there will be more regulation. There needs to be. It might not be exactly in the form that Elizabeth Warren proposed. However, I think that it is time for some change in this industry.
Is there a lawmaker that gets it?
In this political environment, it's difficult to have the sort of unfortunately time and thoughtfulness and discussion and debate that it really warrants. And I think hopefully we'll see that throughout the upcoming election. But right now I've not seen the perfect proposal. Maybe Mayor Pete will be the solution.